The Forgotten Rule. In the vast expanse of the universe, where civilizations stretched across distant galaxies and powerful empires ruled without mercy, there was one rule that every species had been taught to fear. It was a rule older than any of the stars, a rule so ancient that many had forgotten it, but the consequences for breaking it were always devastating. Never wake the humans. This was the universal law that kept the peace, a silent agreement between the most powerful species. For millennia, it had been enforced by those who knew the secret, those who understood that humans, though seemingly simple, were more powerful than anyone could imagine. The universe had its share of terrifying races, but none were like the humans. The galaxy's oldest species, the Joreth, had been the ones to set the rule. They had encountered humanity long before the human race had reached the stars. In those early days, humans were no more than warriors, fighting among themselves and struggling to survive. But when the Joreth made contact, they realized the humans' potential, the potential to shape the universe in ways no one could predict. The humans had an untapped power, a force deep within them, that, if unleashed, could tear the galaxy apart. The Joreth had seen it before. They had felt it when the humans had entered their orbit. They learned quickly that the only way to avoid destruction was to keep humans in check, to keep them isolated from the rest of the universe. It was a simple rule: keep humans on Earth. Don't let them expand. Don't let them grow. But as centuries passed, many had forgotten the reasons behind the rule. New species, new leaders, and new alliances rose, and the warning was ignored. The humans had remained on their homeworld, seemingly harmless. Most of the galaxy thought of them as just another species, primitive, unaware of the true nature of their power. The rule had been reduced to little more than an old legend, a superstition passed around in hushed whispers. Then, everything changed. A group of young explorers from the Valan species, eager to make their mark on the galaxy, had heard the stories of Earth. They had heard about the humans, and like so many others, they believed the tales were exaggerated. The Valan were one of the most advanced species in the galaxy. They had conquered worlds, tamed harsh planets, and created entire civilizations from the dust of stars. Nothing was impossible for them. When the Valan first approached Earth, they did so without fear, without respect for the old rule. They had been warned, of course. The older members of their council had tried to remind them of the humans' potential, but the younger explorers didn't believe it. Earth was just another planet, another place in the endless universe, and the humans were nothing to fear. They landed on Earth with excitement, eager to explore a new world. But as they stepped onto the surface of the planet, a strange, uneasy feeling washed over them. The air was thick with an energy they couldn't understand, a hum that seemed to pulse through the very soil beneath their feet. It was as if the planet itself was alive, watching them. And they didn't know why, but they felt small. The young explorers began their mission, unaware of what they were truly dealing with. They built their small outpost, set up their equipment, and began scanning the planet for resources and signs of life. They searched the deep forests, explored the vast oceans, and scoured the desolate mountains, but they found nothing out of the ordinary. Earth was a simple world, with simple creatures, just as they had been told. But they were wrong. As the explorers dug deeper into the planet, they stumbled upon a hidden structure. It was buried deep beneath the ground, ancient and forgotten. The entrance was marked with strange symbols, a warning that had been long ignored. The explorers, driven by curiosity, ignored the signs and entered the structure. Inside, they found remnants of a past far older than they could have imagined. The walls were covered in alien writing, symbols that none of them could understand. But in the center of the room stood something far more frightening. A large metallic object, dormant and silent. The explorers didn't know it, but they had just uncovered a piece of humanity's ancient history. They were standing in the remnants of a forgotten civilization, one that had once ruled the galaxy with a power so vast that even the stars trembled before it. But when the humans had awoken to their potential, they had realized the danger of their own strength. They had sealed away that power, buried it deep beneath the earth, and created the rule that the universe was too afraid to break. As the explorers activated the dormant structure, they unknowingly triggered a long-forgotten beacon. The signal rippled out into the universe, awakening something that had been sleeping for far too long. Back on Earth, something stirred. It wasn't visible at first, but a change was happening. A ripple in time, a shift in the balance of power. The humans, still unaware of the true extent of their abilities, began to wake. The signal had been received, and humanity's dormant strength was beginning to stir once again. The universe had one rule, and it had just been broken: never wake the humans. But the young explorers didn't know that. They didn't know the price they would pay for their curiosity. And as the first signs of the awakening began, they would soon realize the truth. The humans were no longer sleeping, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The hum of the forgotten beacon echoed through the depths of the Earth's buried structure. It was subtle at first, barely perceptible to anyone in the vicinity, but as it pulsed with increasing frequency, its significance became undeniable. The ancient power, dormant for centuries, was now stirring. The Valen explorers were oblivious to the consequences of their actions. They marveled at the technological wonder they had unearthed, unaware that their interference had unknowingly reawakened something far beyond their comprehension. As the explorers moved deeper into the ancient ruins, the air grew dense with an unfamiliar energy. The walls seemed to pulse with life, as if they were reacting to their presence. But the explorers, excited by their discovery, only pressed forward. They thought themselves invincible, believing that the galaxy's legends about Earth and its hidden dangers were nothing more than old stories. But the truth was far more terrifying than they could have ever imagined. Back on their ship, high above the planet, the Valen leader, Zorath, watched the planet below with growing unease. He'd felt something shift in the atmosphere, a strange disturbance that was hard to ignore. His mind raced with possibilities. Could it be the humans? Had they noticed the explorers? He dismissed the thought almost immediately. The humans were just a primitive species. How could they be capable of anything beyond their small world? However, Zorath knew better than to ignore his instincts. The galaxy's oldest species, including his own, had long feared humans. They had heard the stories, the whispered warnings. They had seen humanity's potential to reshape the universe with a single unexpected move. As Zorath prepared to contact the explorers, an alarm blared aboard the Valen ship. The ship's sensors had detected something large, something ancient. The scanners couldn't process it. It was as if the very fabric of space itself had shifted. Meanwhile, deep underground, the explorers had reached the core of the ancient facility. There, they encountered a massive chamber filled with strange devices, each one radiating power. In the center, a colossal figure loomed, encased in a structure of crystal and metal. It looked as though it had been built to guard something precious, something deadly. At the center of the room, a holographic interface flickered to life, and a deep, resonating voice echoed through the chamber. Humanity, awaken. The explorers froze, their hearts racing. The words were clear, unmistakable. They had triggered something, but what exactly was it? Before they could react, the hologram flickered and then vanished, leaving only a lingering chill in the air. The explorers exchanged nervous glances. What had they uncovered? And more importantly, who had left this message? Unknown to them, the signal sent from Earth had been received by those who had feared it the most, the hidden guardians of the human race. The ancient warriors who had once kept the balance of the universe in check were now being roused from their slumber. And with them, the very power that had kept the galaxy in peace for centuries. As the explorers made their way back toward the entrance of the ruins, the ground beneath their feet trembled. The entire structure seemed to be alive, responding to the signal that had been sent across the stars. Something old, something dangerous, was waking up. and the galaxy was about to feel its wrath. On the Valen ship, Zorath's worst fears began to unfold before him. The galaxy's most advanced sensors, capable of tracking ships across light years, now detected a surge of energy from Earth, unlike anything ever recorded. Suddenly, without warning, a massive energy wave shot out from the planet's surface, reaching into the depths of space like a beacon to the stars. Zorath's hands clenched the console as he realized what was happening. The humans were not just waking up. They were calling for something. They were no longer the passive, primitive species they had once been. They had changed. And as the energy wave reached the farthest corners of the galaxy, it became painfully clear to Zorath. The universe had broken the rule. The humans were awake, and the universe was about to pay the price. The energy wave from Earth had reached the farthest reaches of the galaxy, and the ripple it caused was felt by every advanced civilization. The Valen ship trembled under the strange force as it raced away from the planet. A trail of cosmic dust left in its wake. On board, Zorath was tense, his mind racing. He had been briefed on Earth's past. Stories of the ancient human civilizations, their destructive wars, their boundless ambition. Yet, none of that had truly prepared him for the gravity of the situation. He had heard the whispers of the human guardians, but they had been dismissed as myths. Now, that myth was becoming all too real. Report. Zorath barked at his crew. We're detecting multiple energy signatures emerging from Earth's atmosphere, the chief engineer replied, voice strained. Unusual patterns, unfamiliar technology. It's like nothing we've seen before. Zorath's mind raced as the words sunk in. He knew that what the explorers had triggered was no accident. This wasn't a forgotten relic or a forgotten species. This was something far worse. The awakening of Earth's long-hidden protectors. He turned to his navigator. Prepare to engage hyperdrive. We need to warn the Council. We need to know what we're dealing with before it's too late. But as the navigator worked the controls, something even more alarming happened. The entire ship lurched forward, caught in a strange gravitational pull, as if Earth itself were reaching out to pull them back. The screen flickered, showing the planet's surface, where towering ships of unknown design began to rise from the oceans, emerging from the very ground as though they had been there all along waiting. These ships were unlike anything the Valens had ever seen, massive, sleek, and brimming with power. Zorath, a voice cried out from the ship's sensor bay, panic in the tone. They're moving towards us. Outside, the darkness of space revealed something far more terrifying. Human ships, some hundreds of kilometers long, had begun to engage. Their hulls glowed with an ancient energy, their weapons primed and ready. In a flash, an immense beam of energy shot across space. Zorath barely had time to react as his ship rocked from the impact. The force was enough to crack the ship's outer hull, sending sparks flying and alarms blaring throughout the vessel. His hands gripped the console, heart pounding in his chest. The human guardians weren't just back. They were angry. And they had the power to back it up. Evade, Zorath shouted, his voice strained. But his orders were drowned by the overwhelming wave of energy. The ship's shields flickered and failed, sending the vessel into a downward spiral. As the Valen ship tumbled through space, Zorath realized that it wasn't just his ship that was at risk. The galaxy itself had been irrevocably changed. The humans had awakened, and now their wrath was directed squarely at those who had broken the sacred rule. Back on Earth, the ancient machines that had lain dormant for centuries hummed with life. They sent shockwaves through space, their presence echoing in the minds of every civilization. The human guardians were not just an ancient species. They were the protectors of Earth, and their power surpassed anything the galaxy had ever known. But the worst part, they weren't just protecting Earth. They were protecting something else, something the galaxy had forgotten. The universe had crossed a line, and now there would be no going back. Zorath, still struggling to regain control of his ship, gritted his teeth. Prepare for a counterattack, he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. But deep down, he knew that they had underestimated the humans, and it was already too late to undo the damage. The first strike had been made, and it was only a matter of time before the entire galaxy felt the full force of humanity's vengeance. The Galactic Council had been in an uproar ever since the first wave of human retaliation. They had underestimated the humans for too long, thinking of them as a species lost to time. But now, as their ancient guardians stirred from their long slumber, the truth was clear. Earth was no longer the defenseless planet they once believed it to be. On Earth's surface, the air crackled with energy. The once peaceful atmosphere now hummed with a vibration that sent chills down the spine of anyone who stood in its presence. People could feel it. The air was different. The world was different. For those who lived on Earth, it was the moment they had all feared, yet never truly believed would come. The awakening of the ancient powers that had long protected their world. But this awakening came with an undeniable sense of purpose, a purpose that could not be ignored. In the heart of the Earth's most secure military base, a group of elite soldiers stood in a darkened command center. They had witnessed the first signs of the Guardians' return. The instruments on the walls flickered with strange symbols and incomprehensible readings. The once secret archives were suddenly filled with warnings of the same event, all pointing to this one inevitable moment. General Matthews, a grizzled veteran who had seen his fair share of conflict, stood at the head of the room. His face was grim, his mind heavy with the implications of what was happening. His hand clenched into a fist as he stared at the monitors. "They're here," he muttered, barely audible. His second in command, Captain Elena Cruz, approached him. "General, the Guardians. They've been dormant for centuries. No one knew for sure how they would respond if they were awakened. But this is far worse than we imagined. They're activating every system at their disposal." Matthews turned to face her, his expression hardening. "And that's why we need to be ready. We've been planning for a long time, Cruz, for this moment, for this fight. But no one thought it would happen like this. The galaxy has made its mistake, and now we're going to make sure they know just how costly it was." Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet rumbled. A low, booming sound echoed through the complex. The lights flickered, and the ground shook as though the planet itself were fighting back against the presence of the foreign invaders. "Alert the fleets," Matthews ordered, his voice now filled with urgency. "Prepare for the worst. We don't know what's coming, but we sure as hell aren't going to let it catch us off guard." Back in space, the human warships, ancient, silent behemoths, began to mobilize. From hidden bunkers and deep beneath the Earth's surface, the largest military vessels ever constructed began to ascend. Their form was sleek, mysterious, and unmistakably human. These ships had been built long before any alien species could fathom their capabilities, and they were now ready to defend Earth, no matter the cost. Far beyond Earth, in the deepest reaches of space, Zorath's Valen fleet was still struggling to regain its bearings. They had barely survived the initial strike from Earth's awakening forces, but the truth was undeniable. Earth was no longer the weak, primitive world that they had dismissed for so long. It was a sleeping giant, now fully awake and primed for war. "The Guardians have reappeared," one of Zorath's officers reported, "and their power is unlike anything we've ever encountered. We cannot afford another strike like the last one. We need to prepare for a full-scale counteroffensive." Zorath's eyes narrowed. "We will prepare, but we must understand one thing. The humans are no longer under our control. The line has been crossed, and they will fight. But this isn't just about Earth anymore. This is about our survival. They will show no mercy." The realization hit Zorath like a hammer. The Valen's arrogance had led them to believe that Earth was a conquered world, fragile, weak, and easily controlled. But as the ancient Guardians awoke, that false belief shattered. Earth was not merely a world to be controlled. It was a force in and of itself, one capable of defending its own against any threat, no matter how powerful. Far across the galaxy, every species that had once doubted Earth's potential began to feel the tremors of this awakening. For the first time in centuries, they were reminded of the one rule that had governed the universe: don't wake the humans. But now, the consequences of that rule were being paid in full. Back on Earth, Matthews stood before the command center's massive view screen. He could see the human warships rising, their hulls glowing with a strange ancient energy. The moment had arrived. Earth had been awakened, and there would be no turning back. "The Guardians are awake," Matthews said, his voice heavy with determination. "And we will show the galaxy what happens when you break the rule." The tension in the command center of Earth's military command was palpable. Every officer, every soldier, and every technician stood at attention, aware that history was being made. The Earth, once thought to be a small, insignificant planet, was now the most important battleground in the galaxy. General Matthews' face was grim as he watched the vast fleet of human warships rising from their secret bunkers. Their sleek, imposing silhouettes were visible on the view screens, glinting with a power that had been dormant for far too long. "General, all systems are online," Captain Cruz reported, her voice steady, but filled with the underlying excitement that came with the realization of what they were about to face. "We're ready to launch. The fleet is waiting for your orders." Matthews didn't answer immediately. His eyes were fixed on the view outside the command center, where the first wave of human warships was lifting off into the dark sky. The rumble of their engines reverberated through the very ground they stood on. The humans were not only defending their home, but also sending a message that would echo across the universe. Earth was no longer the weak, vulnerable world they had once been. Earth was a force to be reckoned with. The military base shook again, this time from something deeper, something far more powerful. Matthews turned back to the display and saw something that made his blood run cold. The Guardians had fully awakened. Their ancient ships, old beyond time itself, were now taking flight. Their enormous, ethereal forms glowed with a faint otherworldly light. The air around them seemed to warp and bend, as if the very fabric of reality was responding to their presence. "We've got company," Cruz muttered, her fingers flying over the console. "There's no turning back now." For the first time since the beginning of the crisis, Matthews allowed himself a moment to feel a flicker of hope. The Guardians were on their side. They were the ancient protectors of Earth, and with them, humanity stood a chance. They were more than mere soldiers or warships. They were a symbol of the strength and resilience of Earth, a force that no alien army could ever truly understand. Meanwhile, in deep space, the Valen fleet, led by Zorath, was preparing for their final assault. They had underestimated the humans for too long. They had underestimated the ancient power that lay dormant within the core of Earth. Now, they would pay the price. Zorath's eyes glowed with the cold light of determination. The earlier reports from his officers had confirmed his worst fears. The Guardians were no myth. They were real, and they were furious. He had assumed that Earth would be an easy conquest, but now he saw the true nature of the mistake he had made. "Prepare for battle," Zorath ordered. "We cannot afford to retreat. If we fall now, the galaxy will forever be in the shadow of these humans and their guardians. But we are not going to fall. We will crush them." His officers moved swiftly, securing their battle stations. The massive Valen ships, sleek and terrifying, loomed in the distance. They had superior numbers, advanced technology, and overwhelming firepower, but they lacked one thing. They had no understanding of the human spirit, the raw, unstoppable power that came from protecting one's home and loved ones. They had underestimated the human will. Back on Earth, the battle was about to begin. The fleets were assembling, the air crackling with tension. The Guardian ships, now in full formation, were taking their place in the sky, their immense presence a promise of protection and vengeance. The battle cry of humanity had been answered, and the universe would soon know that Earth's children were not to be trifled with. General Matthews stood tall, watching the holographic map that projected the positions of both the human and alien fleets. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The fate of Earth, of humanity, rested on their shoulders. "We fight for more than just survival," Matthews said, his voice low but filled with resolve. "We fight for our future. We fight for every single person on this planet. We fight for the guardians who have come to our aid. And we fight for the legacy of Earth, for the generations to come. We will not be defeated." The moment of truth had arrived. The fleets were ready. The guardians were ready. The Valen fleet was on its way. The universe was about to witness a battle unlike any other, a battle for Earth's future, and a battle that would echo through the stars for eons to come. The silence before the storm was thick, suffocating. Both sides knew it was coming, the final clash that would decide the fate of Earth, the fate of humanity. It was no longer just a battle of military might. It was a battle for survival, for freedom, for the right to exist in the universe. The massive human warships, led by their guardians, were now locked in formation, preparing for the inevitable. The air around Earth hummed with energy as the first volley of communications was sent across the void. The message was clear. Earth would not be an easy conquest. Earth had no intention of surrendering. General Matthews stood at the center of the command center, his eyes glued to the massive view screen. The image in front of him was breathtaking. Battleships the size of cities, the ancient, glowing ships of the Guardians, and the looming, ever-growing presence of the Valen fleet. It was a scene from a nightmare, yet it was humanity's reality. The calm before the storm had long passed. Now, they stood on the precipice of war. "General, the Valen fleet is entering range," Captain Kruz reported, her voice calm but edged with the urgency of the moment. "All systems are primed and ready." Matthews nodded, his expression unreadable. He had faced wars before, countless battles against enemies far superior in number and firepower. But this was different. This was not just about Earth's survival. This was about something much greater. Humanity was about to show the universe just what they were capable of. "Open a channel to the fleet," Matthews ordered. "Let them hear our message." The screen flickered, and his voice boomed across the comms, reaching every ship, every soldier, every guardian. "Today we stand together," Matthews began, his voice unwavering. "Today we fight not just for Earth, but for every soul who has ever called this planet home. We fight for those who came before us, for the children who will follow us, and for the guardians who have answered our call. We will not go down without a fight. We will not be intimidated. We will not be silenced. This is our home, and we will defend it with everything we have. Now let's show them what it means to face humanity." A cheer erupted throughout the fleet, a chorus of voices from all corners of Earth and its territories. They weren't just soldiers. They weren't just warriors. They were humans, defending their home, their families, their future. And with the guardians by their side, they were unstoppable. The Valen fleet, a monstrous array of alien warships, had reached their final position. Zorath stood aboard his flagship, his eyes narrowing as he watched the humans prepare for battle. He had underestimated them once before. He would not make that mistake again. The Guardians were real. He knew that now, but that did not change the fact that the Valens were far superior in both strength and numbers. "Prepare for the first strike," Zorath commanded, his voice cold as ice. "We have the advantage in firepower. This will be over before they even know what hit them." As the Valen fleet prepared to launch its opening salvo, Matthews issued the order. "Fire everything." The Earth fleet responded with an overwhelming barrage of energy blasts, missiles, and railgun rounds. The sheer scale of the attack was enough to rattle even the hardened Valen forces. The first wave of human firepower collided with the Valen ships with a deafening roar. The shockwave of the explosion rippled through space, shaking the very fabric of the battlefield. The Guardians, their ships glowing with otherworldly energy, joined the fray, unleashing torrents of destructive fire upon the Valen fleet. Their weapons were not like anything the galaxy had seen before, ancient, powerful, and devastating. They tore through the Valan ships with ease, each blast a reminder of why the universe had once feared the Guardians. Zorath watched the chaos unfold, his expression twisting into a mask of disbelief. The humans, these so-called primitive creatures, were not only holding their own, but they were pushing his fleet back. The Guardians' power was unlike anything he had ever encountered, and their unrelenting assault left no room for his forces to regroup. "Redirect all power to the shields," Zorath barked, his voice rising in anger. "Prepare to retaliate. We will not lose to these insects." But despite their strength, the Valan fleet was struggling to keep up. The human warships, now fully operational, fought with a relentless fury that took the Valans by surprise. The Guardians were far more than mere allies. They were the embodiment of Earth's ancient power, and together with the humans, they formed an unstoppable force. As the battle raged on, Earth's forces were pushing the Valan fleet to the brink. The enemy ships were now battered, their hulls scorched from the constant barrage of human and Guardian fire. But the Valans were not giving up. They were ruthless. They were determined to finish what they had started. And yet, despite the overwhelming odds, despite the sheer force of the alien armada, the humans were holding their ground. With every explosion, with every ship destroyed, Earth was sending a message that the universe would not soon forget. The storm had finally broken. The battle for Earth had begun, and no one could predict the outcome. The only thing certain was that the universe was witnessing a war unlike any other. The universe seemed to hold its breath as the final moments of the battle unfolded. The once mighty Valan fleet, a symbol of their empire's dominance, was crumbling before the relentless onslaught of human and Guardian firepower. Ships that had once ruled the stars were now burning husks drifting through the vacuum of space. Explosions lit up the battlefield, each one marking the fall of another Valan vessel. The tide had turned, and it was clear now that Earth was not only holding its ground, it was winning. Zorath, the leader of the Valan fleet, stood in the command center of his flagship, his hands gripping the cold metal of his chair as he watched the devastation unfold. His eyes flickered between the battlefield and the tactical display, but the numbers no longer made sense. His fleet was in disarray, its forces broken and scattered. Earth's Guardians, once thought to be mere myth, were proving to be more powerful than even the most advanced alien technologies in the galaxy. And the humans, those fragile, seemingly insignificant creatures, had fought with a ferocity that Zorath had never expected. He had underestimated them, and now he was paying the price. "Retreat!" Zorath roared, his voice trembling with fury and disbelief. "We cannot win this battle. Order the fleet to fall back immediately." But it was too late. The Valan retreat was already being cut off. Earth's warships, maneuvering with precision, locked down every escape route. The Guardians had encircled the remaining Valan ships, and the humans were closing in for the kill. The Valan fleet, once a symbol of unassailable power, was now nothing more than a trapped animal, struggling to break free from its fate. On the human side, General Matthews stood at the heart of the command center aboard his flagship, his eyes steely and determined. The battle had been long, but victory was within reach. The Valans had underestimated Earth, just as every other species had before them. They had made one fatal mistake. They had crossed a line. And now, the consequences were unfolding before their eyes. "Keep up the pressure," Matthews ordered, his voice steady, but filled with the weight of responsibility. "We end this today." The warships, their engines roaring to life, surged forward, cutting through the remaining Valan defenses. The final assault began, an overwhelming, unstoppable force that crushed what little resistance the Valans could muster. Each blast from the human fleet sent shockwaves through the Valan ships, tearing them apart piece by piece. As the final moments of the battle drew near, Zorath's flagship, his last hope, was the last ship standing. But even that was not enough. The Guardians, their ancient power surging through the cosmos, laid waste to the last of the Valen defenses. With one final devastating strike, Zorath's flagship was obliterated, its remains scattering into the cold void of space. The Valen Empire was no more. In the aftermath of the battle, silence reigned. The sounds of war were gone, replaced by the eerie calm of a universe that had just witnessed the end of an era. Earth's fleet stood victorious, its ships intact and its warriors still standing. But this was not just a victory for Earth, it was a victory for humanity. A reminder that, no matter the odds, no matter the enemy, humans would never be underestimated again. General Matthews looked out over the remains of the battlefield, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what had been lost. The cost of the war had been high, but humanity had emerged stronger for it. The universe would never forget the day Earth stood alone against an empire that thought it could conquer the galaxy. And just as the Valens had underestimated humanity, so too would every other species in the galaxy. The battle for Earth had been won, but the war for the future had just begun. "Prepare for the next phase," Matthews said quietly, turning away from the screen. "We've shown them what we can do. Now we rebuild." As the human fleet began its slow return to Earth, the message was clear. The Guardians had returned, and Earth was no longer a world to be ignored. The universe had learned one undeniable truth: never again would humanity be seen as weak, vulnerable, or easy prey. The storm had passed, but the legacy of Earth's victory would echo through the stars for eons to come. The fall of the Valen Empire marked the beginning of a new era, an era where Earth and its human guardians would no longer be just a myth. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the universe would soon learn that when humanity rises, nothing can stand in its way.